Catholicism is one of the most influential and widely followed religions in the world, considered the first to adopt the teachings of Jesus Christ. Even after the Protestant Reformation in the Middle Ages introduced new interpretations, the Catholic Church continues to gather billions of followers and is managed by powerful historical institutions like the Vatican and the papacy. Like any human entity, the Catholic Church and its political representatives have not been immune to scandals over the centuries. With a history spanning over 2,000 years, the Church has faced numerous disputes, controversies, and scandals, involving both its administrative headquarters and its leaders, especially the popes, who are seen as the main representatives and intermediaries between earth and heaven. But how did the teachings of Jesus, a simple and humble man, evolve into such a wealthy and contradictory institution? What are the biblical foundations that support the political and religious leadership of the popes? Who were the most controversial popes in history, and how has the Church dealt with recent controversies? Stay with us to uncover the answers to these and other questions. After all, what might the Church not want you to know about the popes? Let's start with a question many people ask. How is someone chosen to be the representative of God on earth, the Pope? What are the biblical foundations that support the choice of this unique leader who has influence over religion worldwide? One of the most cited Bible passages to justify this choice is Matthew 16:18-19. In this passage, Jesus is talking with his disciples and asks Simon, who is just a simple fisherman, who he believes Jesus is. Simon correctly answers, recognizing Jesus as the Messiah, the Son of the living God. At this moment, Jesus changes Simon's name to Peter and gives him a special mission. He says, "And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." This role given by Christ is extremely significant. Peter is considered the first leader of the early church and the first pope, receiving the power to connect the divine with the human and heaven with earth. That's why his position is also called pontiff, which means bridge builder. According to Catholic tradition, Peter traveled to Rome during his mission of evangelization, where he was ultimately martyred for his Christian faith. It is said that he was executed in Nero's circus, an arena outside the Roman walls, where the Basilica of St. Peter was later built, a major architectural symbol of the papacy and the Catholic Church. However, this version is part of the official Catholic narrative and is not universally accepted by all Christians and historians. Many believe that Peter may never have gone to Rome, and that there is not enough biblical evidence to justify centralizing power in a single leader to oversee all aspects of the Church. Some argue that in the early centuries of Christianity, the Church was decentralized, with local communities led by bishops. The idea of the papacy as a centralized institution began to take shape in the 4th century, largely due to the influence of Emperor Constantine. Constantine converted to Christianity after a dream in which he saw a cross with the inscription, "In this sign you will conquer." The next day, he instructed all his soldiers to place the Christian symbol on their shields, and they indeed won a crucial battle. From then on, Constantine played a key role in legitimizing and promoting Christianity within the Roman Empire. In 313 AD, he issued the Edict of Milan, which granted religious freedom to Christians and ended the persecutions. Later, in 325 AD, he convened the Council of Nicaea, which defined important Christian doctrines and marked a turning point in the history of Christianity. Constantine played a crucial role in unifying the Church and the state. He built the first Christian basilica in Rome, where St. Peter is believed to have been buried, laying the groundwork for what would become known as Vatican City. Additionally, Constantine granted Pope Sylvester I a series of privileges and lands, strengthening the Pope's position as an authoritative figure within the empire. This relationship between the papacy and the Roman imperial power created a model of collaboration between the Church and the state that shaped European history for centuries. the papacy continued to expand its influence and authority, becoming one of the most powerful institutions of the Middle Ages. The Vatican became the spiritual and administrative center of the Catholic Church, and the Pope, as its leader, held authority not only in spiritual matters, but also in political and social issues. All this power granted to the papacy made the position highly sought after, which sometimes led to the role being distorted from its original principles and purposes. Over the centuries, several popes have been known for their controversial and negative actions. A notable example is Pope Stephen VI, who led the Church from 896 to 897. His election came during a tumultuous period for Catholicism, marked by political intrigues and rivalries among noble families in Rome. The most striking event of his papacy was the trial of his predecessor, Pope Formosus. Influenced by Roman nobles who were enemies of Formosus, Stephen VI called a synod in January 897 to judge the deceased pope. The issue was that Formosus had been dead for over 7 months. Despite this, his body was exhumed, dressed in papal garments, and placed on a throne for the trial. This event became known as the Cadaver Synod. At the synod, Stephen VI, acting as the prosecutor, interrogated Formosus's corpse and accused him of various crimes, such as perjury, violating church law, and usurping the papacy. Naturally, Formosus couldn't defend himself. The result was a posthumous condemnation. His decrees and orders were annulled, his fingers were cut off, and his papal robes were removed. Formosus was excommunicated, and his body was thrown into the Tiber River, a common practice for criminals at the time. Stephen VI's actions were met with widespread outrage both inside and outside the church, showing that his motivations were more political than religious. His papacy was brief and ended tragically. After the synod, Stephen VI was deposed, imprisoned, and a few months later died in his cell. Now let's talk about Pope John XIII, who is considered one of the most controversial popes in the history of the Church. He served from 955 to 964 and became pope at just 18 years old, making him one of the youngest popes ever. However, what was expected to be a time of energy and renewal quickly turned into a series of immature and reckless behaviors, which soon became a major scandal. John XIV was known for his dissolute life and questionable morals, and his bad reputation spread quickly. He was accused of hosting parties and orgies in the papal palace, and even appointing lovers to cardinal positions. Additionally, there were reports of him committing incest and even ordering the murder of his political opponents. John XIII's scandalous behavior caused outrage among many church leaders and laypeople, who saw his conduct as an affront to Christian principles and papal dignity. His critics even labeled him as the Antichrist due to his depraved behavior. In addition to moral issues, Pope John V's papacy was also marked by political and military conflicts. He sought alliances with various rulers and, in some cases, became involved in violent disputes. His political recklessness and inability to maintain stability within the Church weakened the papal authority. John XIV died prematurely at the age of 27, likely due to the consequences of his libertine lifestyle, leaving a legacy of scandal and criticism. His papacy is a clear example of the challenges faced by the Church when unfit leaders hold its highest office. After his death, the Church worked hard to restore its reputation and reaffirm its moral authority, but the effects of John XIV's papacy were felt for many years. Let's talk about Pope Boniface VIII, who led the Church from 1294 to 1303 and is often remembered for his controversial actions. Boniface VIII is considered by many as the atheist pope because of his decisions and conflicts that deeply shook papal authority. During his papacy, Boniface VIII faced major political tensions, particularly with King Philip of France, known as Philip the Fair. The conflict arose because Boniface tried to assert the papacy's supremacy over European kings and princes, especially on temporal issues like tax collection and control over ecclesiastical appointments. Philip IV, on the other hand, sought to consolidate royal power and expand the state's authority over the Church, leading to a standoff that culminated in the Roman Council of 1302. At this event, Boniface issued the papal bull Unam Sanctum, which claimed papal supremacy over all spiritual and temporal matters, stating that all of humanity was subject to the Pope. The situation reached its peak when Boniface was captured in Anagni in 1303 by envoys of the king. Although he was freed due to a popular uprising, the experience severely damaged his authority and health, and he died shortly after under controversial circumstances. In addition to his conflict with Philip IV, Pope Boniface VIII's papacy was also marked by internal controversies, including accusations of nepotism and simony, as well as disputes with other European leaders and members of the clergy. Some sources even claim that he said Jesus never existed and that the Eucharist was just water and flour, challenging fundamental Catholic beliefs such as the existence of Jesus Christ and the Holy Eucharist. These controversies highlight how the quest for power can distort fundamental principles and compromise what should be the highest connection between God and humanity. As we discuss historical controversies, it's also important to look at more recent events. After a series of scandals and the splits caused by the Protestant Reformation, the papacy evolved into a more administrative and discreet role. While the popes still held authority, their behavior became much more subdued compared to earlier leaders, making them more distant and almost unknown figures. This changed significantly with John Paul II, who became Pope in 1978 and held the position until his death in 2005. Known as the Rockstar Pope, John Paul II played a crucial role in spreading the Christian faith, using the advancement of media to promote his image and Christian principles. He traveled to countless countries, influenced important political decisions that led to peace treaties, and worked towards the unification of the Church and the resolution of long-standing internal conflicts. With the third longest papacy in history, John Paul II was quickly canonized. Just 26 days after his death, his canonization process began, which usually starts 5 years after a candidate's death. John Paul II was beatified in 2011 and canonized in 2014. Although his papacy was largely free of controversies, one of the most debated issues involved his correspondence with Polish-American philosopher Anna Teresa Tymieniecka. Over 350 letters exchanged between them were discovered, and some have suggested that the Pope might have had a romantic relationship with her. However, there is no concrete evidence to support these claims. John Paul II was known for his diplomacy and for maintaining correspondence with people from various backgrounds, and the case with Anna Teresa seems to have been just another example of this practice, with no evidence proving any misconduct. His successor, Pope Benedict XVI, raised some concerns about his moral integrity. He was elected partly due to his conservative positions and his reputation as an exceptional scholar and theologian. However, Benedict XVI seemed to lack the political skills necessary for the role, something that, as we have seen, is crucial for popes over the years. After facing several scandals, including cases of corruption, sexual abuse, and allegations of investments in companies involved in contraceptive production or money laundering, Benedict XVI gradually lost support. Eventually, he resigned in 2013 due to health issues. The current Pope Francis took on the challenging role of unifying Christians and addressing the difficulties brought by modernity and the complex history of the Catholic Church. From the start, he has shown a strong commitment to this mission. His controversies often revolve around his progressive views and his decision to forego the privileges associated with the papacy. From choosing simpler shoes to moving to a convent, the Argentine Jorge Mario Bergoglio has followed the example of his namesake, Saint Francis, one of the most humble saints in Catholicism. Regardless of personal beliefs, we know that religions are created and managed by human beings and therefore are subject to mistakes. What's important is to learn from past errors, to avoid repeating them in the future, and to stay focused on the initial purpose, the journey toward God. That's it for now. See you in the next video.